Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Selling AI. Today we're talking about something that doesn't get enough airtime in the AI conversation, how we handle rejection. I have Andrea Waltz on the show. Andrea is the co-author of Go for No, a book that sold over 500,000 copies, as well as her newest book, When They Say No, which gives us a strategy playbook for actually handling that rejection. Obviously, this has a lot of crossover for sales because handling rejection is one of the critical aspects of maintaining a great mindset as an account executive. And a lot of times right now, AI tooling in sales is built to help reps hear yes faster. But Andrea's whole methodology says the real leverage is getting to no as quickly as possible. In today's episode, Andrea and I talk about why disqualification beats persuasion, why outlier wins keep weak deals alive in your pipeline, and where AI fits into the sales process, which really is optimizing for an opposite mindset here. So, all right, let's get into it. Andrea, thank you so much for being with us today and to talk about going for no. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Warren. I'm excited about this.
Awesome. Well, listen, give us a little bit about your background. What was the genesis of you writing Go for No almost 25 years ago? And what's the path that took you from there to now just basically having a through line through your entire career with this type of methodology?
Yeah. So it's based on, it kind of has an origin story, if you will. And it's based on a situation that my husband, Richard, had. We wrote Go for No together. We run our business together. And it was in the retail industry where he was selling suits for a living. His district manager watched him have this great sale. And then after the sale, proceeded to ask Richard what that customer said no to which Richard had to reply, that customer said yes to everything. What are you talking about? He was really kind of annoyed. And then the district manager said, yeah, I watched you sell. But if you never had heard no at all, then how did you know the customer was done? And that was kind of this pivotal moment where Richard realized that he sold out of not only did he sell out of his own wallet, but he really didn't like hearing the word no. And so he decided that he would make it his mission to hear no more often. And his sales got better. He finally became an award-winning salesman after a year, went into more sales and got into training and sales management. And when we met, he told me this Go for No strategy, philosophy, if you will. And I realized I was the same way. I didn't like hearing no. And so when we launched our own company doing speaking and training and workshops, again, we were really focused on the retail industry at that time. That was our background. I used the Go for No methodology to get clients. I mean, we had no other plan. It was cold calling and disqualifying as quickly as possible. And so we used it kind of in the B2B world as well, and then decided to write the book.
Awesome. Let me pull on that origin story because I think it's fascinating. I actually think there's an additional thread there. So in theory, what your husband's boss was saying at the time is even if the sale went great, you sold a suit, let's say in this scenario, right? The sale went smooth, it was great. You said yes, right? You really had no idea if that person needed 3 suits, right? Why are you here? You just sold them a suit. You have no idea if it was like, I need 3 different colors, 3 different styles, 3 different reasons for this. I travel a lot and I need multiple suits, right? Like, I know there's a lot of like parallels for tech, but that's basically what your husband's boss was saying at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he ended that whole conversation by asking Richard, he's like, do you know where that customer is right now? And Richard's like, no, where? And he's like, he's at the other end of the mall spending the rest of the money that you wouldn't let him spend with us.
Yeah. That's a fascinating origin story. I love it. And I can't wait to pull into this a little bit more. Awesome. So yeah, give me a little bit more. If someone hasn't read Go for No, right? Like what's a key premise that's in the book? How can we synthesize it? And what's one way that like someone might get it wrong if they just assume to understand what you're talking about?
Right. And I love that question. And by the way, we've created a huge, I feel like, marketing challenge for ourselves, because I think when people hear the title Go for No, if you're really in sales, you kind of get it very quickly. But if you're not, or maybe you're thinking about it wrong, there are a lot of ways to get it wrong. I mean, people think like, oh, Go for No, okay, it just means it's a numbers game. They look at it kind of surface level. Some people actually get confused and they're like, why would I want to hear no more? I want to hear yes. I mean, everybody wants to get to yes and all of that in sales. So we have created this challenge. In terms of the book is a short 80-page fable. So it is not kind of one of these, your typical, I guess, step 1, step 2, step 3 type of book. And in this book, Our main character's name is Eric. He's a B2B copier salesman. So of course this goes way back. Like this book is starting to become like one of these, super dated classics. Like
Right. Vacuum door to
everything's
door salesman, right? Like it's been like
exactly.
written that like worship. Yep.
Yeah, it's very retro. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
So
retro's good.
maybe that even makes it more relevant. So anyway, he goes to bed one night. He wakes up in this fantastic house, and he has no idea where he is. And he discovers that he has somehow magically, supernaturally traveled 10 years in the future, and he meets a wildly successful future version of him. And so the book basically is the two of them trying to figure out how did this future version become so successful. Like the current version, he's an average sales guy, and he's like, "What happened?" And they discover through kind of comparing notes about their past that it was that moment when they were selling suits for a living, when the district manager said, "What did that customer say no to? How did you know he was done?" That was kind of this pivotal moment. And this multiverse version of him took that and said, "This is how I'm going to be successful. I'm going to go for no. I'm just going to hear no all the time." And so that's kind of the general plot, and we go into some strategies and some tactics through conversation and through other situations in the book, but we accomplish a lot in 80 pages. I'll say that.
Love it. And I know it's more of a general focus, right? This isn't just pure sales, but we're going to try to hone in on how this kind of impacts sales, where going for no, handling rejection is a big piece, right? So, like, there's a scenario here where, like, you've talked about disqualification, right? You hear a decent amount, and this is the purest form of going for no, and there's a lot of different variations here, right? But like the best reps disqualify deals. They're looking to disqualify deals. Can you talk about the strategies that you discuss in sales for how reps can actually like get into this mindset, right? Like, and what are the barriers for reps getting into that mindset where they're overqualifying and not disqualifying?
Yeah, so you've got to completely change your philosophy, right? And become really a gatekeeper to your own product, services, whatever it is you're selling. And the best way to do that is through disqualification, and that really is. I mean, we don't have talk tracks. We're not recommending particular scripts, but it really is figuring out the 2 to 3 questions that are the questions that if you can get those answered early, then you're going to save yourself a whole lot of time, and you're also respecting your prospects' time. And that's one of the things that I think is a differentiator is having the respect to get to the tough questions first instead of trying to massage this person and kind of schmooze them and go through all of this stuff and wait on asking the hard questions, thinking that this thing is somehow going to turn into a yes, when if you would just ask the better questions up front, you would have gotten a quick no and you could quickly move on.
Yeah. Do you have an example, an engagement you've run over the past couple of years where you had a really good, like, stark example of a couple of those questions, or a question that could be asked that might be a little counter to what let's say, a layperson might think sales should be doing?
So, I mean, even in our own business, like for a long time, when we first launched our business, I mean, we were calling people and kind of doing, I guess, kind of more old school conversation starting and asking general questions and trying to build the rapport, trying to do discovery, find out, ask information. And then we decided, you know what, let's just start doing go for no early and often. So our like very first disqualification question, like right out of the gate is, hey, do you guys ever hire professional speakers? And, if they say, "Oh, sorry, that's actually question number 2." Question number 1, this is the most pivotal question, is, "Do you have meetings and conferences for your
Okay.
salespeople?" I mean, that's like question, and if they say no, then I'm not gonna sit there and waste time trying to convince them that their approach is wrong and that they really need to have a sales meeting where they bring people together. And do you hire speakers? Question number 2. And if you hire speakers, would you be open to getting some information? Would you be open for us to set a meeting where we could talk this through further? So in our own business, we're really big on disqualification. And if we get no's to our first 2 or 3 questions, then we're good. We move on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question, right? Like, so, like, when we talk about discovery, um, we run, let's say relatively complex conversations, right? Like we have to train our people to do proper discovery. They need to learn Sandler, how to ask these types of questions, staying behind the pendulum, which is kind of like a version of like going for no. It's not like jumping for yes would be the opposite of like being ahead of the pendulum, right? But it's not so stark, right? But really, it's just as simple. It can be just as simple as that, right? So, I sell a product that helps people drive win rates. I don't ask the question first. Hey, like, do you have trouble winning enough of your qualified pipeline? Right? Like, no, I don't have trouble. All right, cool. Sounds good. Like, what's your win rate? 35%. Cool. That's the no. Great. You're probably not going to buy a piece of software to get it from 35 to 40%. It's lovely meeting you, right? Like, how could you really? It's everyone I talk to thinks it should be simpler than it is, but then most people execute it in a way that's too complex in this scenario. So I really like that. Like, what are the couple of questions you can ask up front to just get to the answer? And then let's say someone gets to those core, yeah, we have meetings and conferences and we have professional speakers come in, right? So like to get to that, what's the next version for you in your pipeline to like, what's the next no you're looking for?
Yeah, so the next no really is to find out more about them and what their wants are and what their needs are. And of course, those are two very different things oftentimes. And we always kind of start more with want, because if you can focus on what people want, you're going to get there faster than what people need. We all know, like, people need your software. I would say everybody, right? Everybody you talk to in your head, you're like, you need this, right? The question is, do they want it? And that again is kind of more of a go for no type philosophy. So it's like any sales process, Warren. It's finding out like what's going on with their salespeople, what are their struggles, and kind of helping them. And and since we are not a sales methodology, right? We're not Medic, we're not Sandler, we're not Challenger, we're not Spin. So for us, it's like, hey, just ask questions, try to get to the root of the problem. And if at any time you sense, and so this is kind of the mindset part of it, at any time that you sense, oh, I should ask them about this, but you know what? That might be a disqualifier and we may find out that this isn't going to work. We ask it. So it's always you have to always ask the tough questions as early as possible. And I think what a lot of salespeople do is they have kind of these one or two things where they know like, this oftentimes is where people stumble. This thing is such a big objection, and oftentimes this is where I'm going to get like my no, and or oh, this is going to be a problem. But instead, what they want is they delude themselves into thinking that if they can just kind of stay on the yes track and kind of pull this person in through like, okay, let's talk about your pain. Let's ask some other questions. Let's not talk about the elephant in the room. That will somehow magically get fixed when we're much further down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, right? And there's a couple of different angles I want to pull on quickly here. And so let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'll put a pin in that one for a second and try to come back to that. So as my mental note. Let's talk about this wants versus need scenario here. So it's again thinking about this. You're absolutely right. Most of the time when you're talking to a prospect, you have a mindset, and in my case, it's true, right? Like my piece of software, and I never talk about this on the podcast. Everyone should use it, right? And I would give it if you didn't want to pay for it, I'd give it to you so you'd use it. It's not that expensive for me to run, right? There's really no reason not to use it. You need it, right? But that doesn't matter. I go into every call. It doesn't matter, right? Because like not everyone buys my piece of software when I try to sell it to them. So like that need doesn't matter as much. But I'm always trying to solve for understanding or getting them to understand if they need it, right? Hey, you have a win rate problem. You think you have a pipeline problem. You need this piece of software, right? Like that's what you're trying to determine with discovery, right? But if I go into the mindset everyone needs it. And if I get off a call and someone's like, well, I don't really need this, I don't actually really believe them. I understand it's not the right time or it doesn't fit perfectly with your paradigm, but it'd be better if you had it. If I went with the mindset of like, great, we really have to get to it. Do they want it? Do you want to improve win rates? Is that something you think about? No. You know what? Honestly, at that point, I have no shot at the sale. If they're not thinking about improving their win rates, I have no shot, right? So like flipping that mindset from wants to needs is important. Is that something you just said? Is that something that's kind of pivotal to what you talk about? Is this like, that's kind of like shift in mindset?
Um, actually, we spend a lot more time, I think, in our go for no world talking about fear of no, hesitation, talking yourself out of things, making assumptions. The wants need discussion, I think, came up for me. And we talked about this a little bit in When They Say No, but the want need, I think, really comes up when you're to me when you're prospecting, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
and you are doing kind of, and this goes back to a methodology called high probability selling. So if you're trying to quickly disqualify and quickly move through the want, that's where the wants needs come in. It doesn't mean though, go for no is not anti-persuasion either. It's just we don't start there. We want to disqualify so that we're then talking to somebody who has that we've now wildly increased our odds that this could be a fit. Now it's okay, let's start digging in and be willing to hear no to the hard questions. But at the point where we move into need, and I agree with you, Warren, like to me, any company that I would call who does have sales meetings should have us speak there. Like
Yeah, quite. That's right. Yeah.
there is almost no scenario in which that could not be the case. The question is, how much persuasion is it going to take, and what kind of objections do you need to overcome to make that happen?
Yeah. No, I probably argue it's a great. I probably argue a little bit around the fact that you guys aren't a sales methodology, or at least sales methodology tangential, right? I don't know if you'd replace Sandler, right, or
Right.
Challenger Sale, which is a kind of a methodology, but like it's what I try to get to is I used to be heavily process based in sales, and really you have to switch that to mindset. Right. Like it's mindset that leads to behaviors that leads to process and not the other way around. Right. So if you can have a mindset that by default, this is what we're trying to achieve. We need to get to what they want. We need to hunt out the no's and we need not to waste our time. That's a different, if everyone in your sales org is behaving this way, that's a different motion than like most companies are running. So this is a really fascinating way to look at it. I think most sales leaders talk to their reps about getting the elephant in the room out of the way, right? I think there's actually something that's done pretty well. And most times when I'm doing coaching, I'm like, what's the biggest risk to the deal? And how do we address that now and not delay that until later stage? So I think that gets talked about more. But I actually think with what you're talking about, the meat of the middle gets ignored, right? Like where it's like you should be looking for these small triggers throughout the entire process. Do you find it to be like kind of similar and like that? Like most sales teams do like get the big problems out of the way, but are reluctant to look for those small reasons to disqualify or solve for reasons to like go over those hurdles during the process?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I see more, at least in, we do a lot of work in like professional services type of
Okay.
situations. And so
Yeah.
I think I see more of the elephant in the room stuff that doesn't get addressed.
Well,
But
yeah.
to your point, it's interesting. Um, uh, Jeb Blunt, who wrote Fanatical Prospecting, and he's written a ton of books, he talks about getting micro commitments, to your point about getting these small yeses and moving the deal forward. I think that's also where Go for No applies. And I mean, every little micro commitment is an opportunity to go for no as well. That's
Right.
the meat of it, right? That's the meat of the whole process is keep moving step by step by step and make sure that if you do have a couple elephants in the room, they they get handled first.
Gotcha. It's great to know. Let's kind of pivot to when they say no. Once you get the rejection, how you handle that. Tell us a little bit more about like why this was kind of the best follow on for Go for No.
So so for years and years, we have just been hammering people like you need to go for no. Yes is the destination. No is how you get there. If you're not hearing enough, if you're not getting enough yeses, you probably are not hearing enough nos. You're not asking enough people. You're not, so there is a big piece of the quantity game there, even though I hate being couched as like, oh, go for no. It's like, that's a numbers game philosophy, because I know in today's world, quality is so huge. That's what we all talk about, right? It's a quality. And I mean, you come from, I think, Warren, right? It's quality. It's like it's making sure that you are doing the best job possible. And so we're not like we haven't swung the pendulum all the way over to the whole numbers game philosophy by any means. So when it comes to when they say no, the reason why we wrote that was we're in this go for no world, but it's like, wait a minute, what do people do when they get a no? And we really don't address that at all in our go for no book, in our fable, in our speaking engagements or anything. So I told Richard, I'm like, you know what, we need to write this book. So we came up with, and we could have come up with 104. We came up with 44 things that you should think or do or say when you get a no. And some of them are, none of them are rocket science. Like, none of them are just like, we've all experienced all 44 things that we cover in this book, and we've all done them at one time or another, I think, in terms of, these strategies, but you have to be reminded of them. And so, like, for example, one of them is when you get a no, are you talking to the right person? Like, you would say, well, duh, obviously. A lot of the people that read that book are like, oh, wow, that makes sense. Does the person you're talking to, whether they're a gatekeeper or they're someone within an organization, do they have the power to say yes to you? And if they don't, then you just got a no from somebody who has no power and can't even say yes to you. So that's a bad no, as opposed to getting a good no where somebody understands the offer, understands what you're talking about. Another thing when they say no that we go into a lot is the whole idea of response, responding to a no. There's responding to a no mentally, what you say to yourself psychologically, and also what you say to the prospect. And there was a guy named Jonathan Farrington. He passed away. He was British. I think he was the founder of Top Sales Magazine. I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that. But I remember him talking about how important it was to not burn a bridge because, you get a no from an organization and then something goes wrong. That deal falls apart 3 weeks, 6 weeks later, 6 months later. And now who do you think they're going to call if you handled that respectfully, gracefully, like, hey, totally understand. It was great getting to know you guys and to know what's going on with you. I'd love to stay in touch. But if anything changes, please call us. We're here. You're going to get a lot of yeses that way. So in terms of response, Warren, just to kind of put a period on this, it's your internal response, what you think and how you handle that emotionally, and then also externally what you do.
Yeah, it's I think this is especially important when you're talking about, let's say, mid-market enterprise sales, right? Like, let's say $75,000 plus in like annual contract kind of things, right? Especially with more and more technology come out too. The notion is everything's gonna become a little bit more niche, right? So I don't have I'm selling a CRM to everyone will go away more so than I sell a CRM to medical device salespeople who sell this type of medical device because I built this for purpose, right? And so the markets get more narrow. And I have accidentally got a lot of experience in like quite narrow ICPs where it's like, listen, you have product market fit with 3,000 accounts out there, and you can become a $20 million a year business with those in this market if you capture 15% of it, right? But it's like narrow. It's not like wide open, right? In this scenario, there's two things at play that we talked about. One, most of your market really has some sort of need. They would be better off if they had their product. Maybe it's too expensive to solve the problem. Maybe they have other problems they're not ready to, they have to solve first. But most of that market has a need for your product. So need's okay, right? Like, don't worry about that. But two, most of the time, you're going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 open opportunities in order to close that deal, right? Like, it is rare. It is less than half the time you have an open first opportunity open, qualified, close one in these niche markets. Handling the no in a way that is beneficial is going to be pivotal in this market, right? Like, not just like professionally and how you handle it, but how you communicate after that no. How do you stay in touch? How do you nurture that opportunity, knowing that it could take you 36 months to get back to a point where they're ready to solve the problem there. In this particular case, what are some bad ways to handle that now? Maybe like ignore the professionalism piece, like in a non-unprofessional way, ignore that. What are some bad ways to handle that rejection?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that we see. I mean, what do we say in our book? No begging, no bargaining, no, no pouting.
Yeah.
all of those, I've seen all of those
Right.
things, both as on the seller side, but also on the buyer side. And that's why I think it's a big reason why buyers hate dealing with salespeople is they don't, I mean, in general, people don't want to let other people down, right? And so nobody wants to say no. That's why it's so hard to get no. Nobody wants to tell you like, hey, no, it's just not the right time. And so I think those kind of unprofessional ways of handling it are what give salespeople a bad reputation. So, when you do and you're so right about the idea that you've got to nurture those no's. And today's no is tomorrow's. You got to have an unwavering belief and patience, especially like doing what you do. You've got to have patience. You've got to see it in the long term. I have had my record was like 9 years. I was very proud of the record. It was 9 years calling on one company before we finally got hired. And then that record got broken. And I think the company that replaced it, it was like 13 years because we've been in business for
Right.
a long time.
Yeah. Right.
So my attitude is just like, all right, cool. Well, you're on my list. You're a highly qualified prospect for me. I know that you guys need this, even if you don't want it now. And this would be a perfect fit. And so this goes on my forever list, right? I will follow up forever until something happens to me or the company goes bankrupt, like whatever.
Right. 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 Yeah. That's a great way to approach it, right? Because I actually think like especially in tech sales, venture capital created this pressure, not in a bad way, but like you there's a lot of great businesses that sales cycles look more like 4-year journeys with multiple opportunities opened and closed and lost before it's the right time for a company that needs your product is going to buy your products, right? Then the juxtaposition of like I have an investment and I need to get to the next level of revenue in the next 18 to 24 months kind of threw that off. That was the pressure, right? I've talked to a couple of companies where I was like, it seemed like you were about to go out of business at any point, right? And you're getting all this pressure from your venture capital, your board to move faster. And then you kind of got through it for whatever reason, great resilience. But if you had known where you're at now, where you were at then, you would have been okay with it, right? Like you had to get to a lot of no's. Your whole market has to know you. They have to tell you no several times, right? I've dealt with this in a bunch of companies, right? There's a patience in this space and not looking in the sales process is like, I have a company that I've never spoken to. I need to speak with them, qualify them, disqualify them, and move on. But looking at it more like a long term journey, right? Like, what do I do post no? How do I manage this nurture relationship in a better way rather than not just an email every month, but a long term relationship is really kind of like a fascinating way to play on this, right? If you're going to go for no with higher win rates, you're going to have less opportunities and you need to nurture your core market much better in that kind of model.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can and should be going for no with multiple people in the organization. And if you look at it from a quantity standpoint, people always say like, talk to more people, right? Bring more deals into the pipeline. Well, just look at it as, what are the relationships that you're nurturing within that company? And you may have gotten a no from somebody in that company. But again, there's 7 more people that you should be connecting with and starting to nurture. And that's all a go for no. But also where that is a mindset of like, don't give up, don't walk away. Like, what can we do with this no? And are we accepting that from the entire organization? Like, this is just done? Well, of course not. I mean, of course not. You could never do that because to your point about niching down, yeah, and it's only going to get more narrow. And so it's not if it, in fact, Richard and I were just creating a module about this today. And we use the example of, an example of a Girl Scout, selling Girl Scout cookies and a, jet, what was it? A jet, airplane salesperson, like who sells jet engines. And
Yeah.
what would happen if they switched roles? Right? Because you have one super focused on the quality of the presentation, and you have one that's simply focused on the numbers and simply focused on the asking. And yet the Girl Scout is really, really good at asking. The jet engine person is really, really good at quality. But they both have to get good at both, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a funny way to look at it, right? The Girl Scout is better at asking the question, right? In that scenario, than the
Yes.
jet engine sales. That's
Yes.
interesting. Um, cool. Let's position this with another sales topic. So above the line, below the line selling, right? You have like frontline user buyers and you have like economic buyers that are making a decision, VP, CEOs and above. A lot of times in sales, there seems to be this notion. I come across this a lot that I shouldn't reach out to anyone below the line, user buyers, right? That are talking, that can't be the one to make the decision to buy your piece of software or your service, right? I always push back against this. Like one, mainly because there's just not enough volume of economic buyers, and everybody wants to get to them. So you have to go to below the line and figure it out. I think in this paradigm, the go for no and like could they have said yes? There's part of it where you have to qualify what you want them to say yes or no to. If I talk to an account executive for a piece of sales software, I am well aware that they can't like write a check for that software, sign a contract, right? So what yes am I going for there, right? Like I want them to say yes to something to help me progress the deal somehow in some way. How do you talk about that when you're talking to sales teams, right? Like, how do you qualify what you're trying to achieve with the person you're speaking with, and how you're racing to that no or yes answer as fast as possible?
Yeah, well, I guess for every interaction, you have to figure out what your objective is. So you're absolutely right. Like your objective is going to be different at everyone you're talking to, and there's no better way to get a yes than to have people below the line clamoring for your product like that's the easiest sale in the world, and that's what we have found, actually, and and we go after like the top people too, and it's the same. It's the same thing. It's very, very difficult to get through the door with that kind of competition. So it really kind of comes back to what is your objective and what is your call to action? Like what is your single go for no type question um that that you would like this person to do that would move you and help you move forward. And how does that benefit them, of course, too? That's obviously very important.
Yeah, if I like got really explicit with my example, right? If I'm trying to, as we talk, think about what my progression of questions to ask would be, right? So if I'm talking to an account executive who immediately tells me they don't have buying power, right? Like, well, I'm not the right person to talk to. Like, you're in sales, you know, you have to talk to people that don't have buying power, but people by default, if salespeople are going to default to this, then everyone's going to default to this, right? If I was like, great, like what I want to know is, do you have a problem with win rates, right? Yes, I have a problem with win rates. My win rate's too low. Do you guys talk about your win rate problem? Yes, I'm at 16% and I need to get to 30%, right? We talk about this all the time. Are you doing anything to solve that problem? No. Well, why not? Right? Like, there's got to be a reason for that, right? Like, we haven't gotten to it. We have a bigger problem. That's my next no. Be like, yes, I am doing something to solve this problem. I'm doing X. If that's X is what I'm already doing, then I'm probably sunk, right? If it's something different, then there's something there. And then it's like, all right, well, if I show you we have this solution, the last yes or no I need to get to, would you be willing to tell your boss this is something they should take a look at, right? Like, and at any step along that process, it's a no. I'm probably not going to be able to overcome it, is what you're saying, right? Like it's not worth the time. On an outlier basis, maybe, but it's not worth the time. Is that like a kind of the appropriate way to look at that? Like really simple?
Yeah, completely. And that's why going for no, we have this structure in the book we call it the 5 levels of failure. And can I go through them really quickly?
Yeah, go for it, please.
So level 1, the ability to fail, it's where everybody starts, and we use failure liberally because when you are going for no, the mindset is you've got to be willing to fail. Like that's what this whole thing is about. It's teaching salespeople not to be afraid of the word no, fundamentally, not to avoid it. Level 2 is the willingness to fail. It's like you hear go for no and you're like, okay, I'd be willing to hear no, but I don't love it. Level 3 is the wantingness to hear no. This is where you want to hear no. You know that you are not progressing, that you are not talking to enough people, you're not telling your story, you're not nurturing your relationships. Pick whatever, however you are out there getting business. Apply that to wantingness to fail. And then level 4 is failing bigger and faster. And that is talking to people who are maybe bigger companies that you wouldn't normally go after. Maybe it's different levels within that organization that you normally wouldn't talk to, and faster. And so you're right. It's getting to know as fast as you can with as many people as you can. So that's the quantity aspect that I was talking about. And that is, I think, where Go for No started all those years ago. And we were so into like quantity. And now as I said earlier, the game has kind of changed a little bit and everybody's very concerned about quality, and they should be because competition is insane now. But at the same time, what I find, Warren, is that still, and people are just not making enough calls. They're not reaching out enough. They're not having enough
No.
conversations.
No, and that's the time aspect, right? If you're disqualifying deals, right? Like then the question I believe I asked you when we first met was like, everyone talks about pipeline problems. Everyone has a pipeline problem. Even people that say they have 7x coverage, they don't have 7x coverage. They even have a bigger pipeline people that then people that say they have 2.5, because 2.5 is probably well qualified, right? It's hard to give up deals. I'd say 80% of this sales market out there doesn't have enough pipeline at the moment to over disqualify or to lean into disqualification is a tough hill to get over. But I think what you're talking about is that it'll free you up to try to generate as many possible conversations as you can, right? So you're spending less time chasing deals that are most likely not going to close percentage wise and more time generating those conversations along the way.
Right, where there
That's
where
the
there is much more potential of opportunity, and if you don't know what the opportunity potential is because you haven't started that conversation, then that's a huge problem.
Yeah, and that volume piece is huge because you're figuring out who's saying no. Why are they saying no? What types of demographics should I be reaching out to? What message gets that conversation going? What questions gets me to a no or yes faster, right? I think this aligns perfectly. I've never really thought about it in this kind of framework with my reps in the past, but I've always talked about that sales is really not about convincing anyone of anything. Like I have close friends, family that I couldn't convince them of any, right? Like doesn't matter how persuasive, doesn't matter how many facts I have, it does not matter. They will tell me, yeah, that's right. You're right, Warren. Like I get it, right? Like totally understand. But in their mind, they haven't changed their mind, right? To think that sales people as strangers are out there convincing people that they have problems that they didn't know they had or they need solutions they didn't think they needed is kind of a fool's errand, right? Like figuring out that pinch point to be like, how's this deal gonna end? And can I
Right, and yeah, and to your point, so because of that, you start the relationship, you see if they're open, you see if you can get them educated, you ask some questions, and then your mindset really is, okay, now this starts. And if they are qualified, if they kind of passed that initial disqualification hurdle, then now it's just a matter of constantly staying in communication and seeing who else you need to get on board so that you can push that deal forward.
Andrea, let's talk about actually like some tactical use cases for sales leadership. What are some approaches they could take to start to enable their team to kind of shift this mindset along the way?
Right. Couple things. One, we encourage people to set no goals, and this is where leadership really comes in big time. So it is to set a goal for the number of no's you are going to hear in a given day or week. It really kind of gamifies it. It makes it a lot more fun. You can hear no's in any part of the process. So some people like to really differentiate their no's. So it's follow up no's, it's referral no's, it's prospecting no's. I mean, prospecting no's is kind of the easy one, right?
Yeah, right.
And so as leaders, it's holding people accountable to get those no's. Now, and I know people are thinking like, it's so hard to get a no. Like most of the time it's, you're leaving messages, you're DMing people, whatever you're doing on LinkedIn. It's so hard to get a no. And so we're talking about good no's, like we're talking about people who understand what you're asking them to do, like what is the call to action here and saying no to it. So the no goals can't be crazy. They can't be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to get 100 no's this week. I mean, most people aren't doing that kind of volume. And we're not talking about, this is not just production. This is actually getting to a no in any stage of the process. So that is a fun way that leaders can kind of implement this tactically. And then the thing, Warren, is that they really have to celebrate the activity as much as they celebrate and reward the results. So if you have somebody who got 10 or 20 no's in a week or 50 no's in a week, you've got to celebrate that activity. Now, I know people watching this or listening to this are probably like, now, wait a minute, that seems like a lot. If your no's are too high, you're doing something wrong. Like you're messing up on the quality. And yes, we talked about this earlier. No is data and it will tell you something. And if you're getting no a lot in a particular stage of the process, then obviously that's where you're getting hung up. And so that's where you need to make changes. One of the fun things that I have done in the past over the last few years is 21-day go for no challenges with a little cohort. And we've gotten people together. Usually it's like a small group of 8 to 12 people. Everybody's in a completely different business or industry. Like I have people who sell insurance, and I've had digital marketers, and just like people, I've had B2B salespeople in all different kind of walks of life. And we talk about go for no, we talk about setting no goals. And a lot of people learn that their messaging and their scripts are not doing them any favors, and they've got to mix that up because they finally have the data to decide that it's not working, and they can change that up, or they're starting to see that when it comes time to close, they didn't ask good questions up front. And so now that's where they're getting a lot of no's, and they're not closing anything.
Good. I talk a lot about like conversational intelligence. I think one of the best things that like LLMs have done for the enterprise so far and can do is give us access to what people are talking about, both in sales and internal to the organization, right? Like one on average of about 5 hours of meetings a day. And historically, we turn them into a few bullet points in an Asana task board, right? Like conversational intelligence, you could break that, right? A good example in sales is like Salesforce close loss reasons are terrible. The data is not good. There's like 8 reasons on the drop down. It's probably not the right selected reason. And even if it was, it's too narrow, right? But if you could use all of the transcripts that people are generating to see why are people saying no, so probably some bad no's, where it's pure bad salesmanship along the way. We need to like get those out of there, right? But we could really start to build a data set around this, right? Like that is like helpful to analyze. Great, like why are people saying no? And it's the right part of the process, right? A lot of times, if you're dragging a deal along, then at the end they're like, "Oh, this is too expensive," right? Like, "This is great, but I can't deal with it." Honestly, the no was probably earlier in the deal, right? Like, there's another reason, right? Like, they couldn't quite say no, they didn't. You dragged it along, and then at the end, it was easy to say it was too high price wise, and you couldn't come down, right? So, like, it's just an easy way to look at it. I think there's a lot of good data that could be tied to an initiative like this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in general, as a general philosophy, if you believe that go for no, that when you increase your no's, you increase your yeses. If you're willing to buy into that, then as a sales leader, you can't punish people for failure. You can't punish people, for hearing no if they're doing what they're trained to do and they're doing it in the ways that everyone else is doing it. No, you gotta celebrate that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cool. Maybe last question, and you didn't know I was going to ask this, so it might be a hard one. But let's take a little crystal ball out. Let's say your next book, topic in the same vein. What do you think you might be talking about in that next one? Right.
Right, right. Well, so this is something that I didn't mention to you in like our pre-call and everything else. We actually finally wrote a sequel to Go for No.
Right. Yeah.
And it's called, no surprisingly, Go for No, the sequel.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Nice. Okay.
yes, we take Eric, our main character, who I talked about in the first book. It is a fable. He now has a daughter. So it's 25 years later, and now his daughter, um, and a lot of this, of course, is it's philosophy. Like it's our philosophy on sales, our philosophy on Go for No. And so his daughter doesn't know what she's going to do. She graduates from college. She's like totally lost. And he's like, "Well, why don't you come sell for me?" And she's like, "I hate sales." And he goes, "What? You're like you're he's this Go for No guy, right? Like he learned to go for no. He ended up becoming this successful salesperson." And she's like, "No, Dad, Go for No is icky, and you push people and you badger people, and it's all about pushing people into yes by going for no." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, you don't understand it at all." So that allowed us to, we actually took the sequel and wrote it in such a way that we were able to handle some of the objections that people had by reading the first book of, well, what about this and what about that? So we were
Interesting.
able to address a lot of these things. But in the book, Cassidy, Eric decides he's going to buy this golf course, and there's an auction and there's a whole plot line to it. And she ends up flying to Dubai to meet with a potential investor. And this is what we call a big no. So we got to kind of explore some of the things that we didn't explore in Go for No. One of them is just having the courage to go for the big no, like taking more risks, taking more chances.
Yeah, it's a really good follow on too, and for maybe a new generation of salespeople, right? So
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it. That sounds like a great approach. And funny, yes, you probably got if 25 years ago, maybe not so much online hate about this theory, but if you had posted that on social media now, you would have gotten a good amount of feedback that were like, no, this is why this philosophy doesn't work, and you could address those in a subsequent book. Really exciting, fun approach. Cool. Listen, for our listeners, where should they find you? They want to book you for a speaking engagement. They you got big problems in their sales process. How should they find you?
Well, I recommend that people go to goforno.com/quiz and take the no quotient assessment. And this is a really quick, simple little quiz. It measures your thoughts and feelings on failure, success, not sales so much, but really where your thinking and mindset is in relationship to no, so that you know your no quotient. And that will kind of guide you on your journey into becoming someone who is better at handling rejection, who goes for no sooner. So that's what I suggest.
That's great. Well, listen, I appreciate you being on the show. I always like to say, and I mean it each time. It's also like a good 40 minutes of consulting for me. So I need to go change my sales process this week to be a
Yeah,
little bit more
I
focused on
can't wait
chasing
to
that
hear.
no.
Yeah, you gotta test some things out and then let me know. You'll be
No, I
one of my
really
guinea
have to
pigs.
simplify this process. I've made it too complex. And again, it's a perfect example as like a do as I say, not as I do kind of scenario where I'm right back into my old bad founder habits in terms of sales. So this is a really good breaking point for at least some of those kind of bad habits. So I can't wait to read your next book. And yes, I'll drop your link into the show notes. And anybody that has a speaking engagement would love to get someone in front of their sales team, in front of an SKO. At some point, you're going to need Andrea. There's no reason not to. So sometime in the next 9 to 13 years on that scale would be great.
I will still be here.
That's great to hear. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Warren.